We are so excited that Lee is joining us today so that we can actually dive into meme coins. And by actually, moment of Zen, why did you spend all of 30 seconds talking about meme coins in your episode that was
I
supposed to be
know.
about
I
meme
felt
coins?
like I was bait and switched. I love them, to be clear, but
We all
the
do.
episode was pitched to me as come on and talk about meme coins. And then they wanted to talk about the other M word. So
Which is what?
they wanted to talk about marks, and then they wanted to talk about politics, and then they wanted to talk about
Ah,
continents. And it
got
went
it.
in all sorts of directions. And I was like, guys,
At one point, the best line in the podcast might have been when someone's like, what do you think about Europe? And you were just like, I don't. I just don't think about
That's
Europe.
based.
I know, am I supposed to be
based.
thinking about Europe every day? I
Yeah.
love going there, but yeah.
You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something.
Really excited to do this with you guys. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Thank you for joining. Ted, do you want to kick it off?
We want to talk about two things because they're also interconnected. Number one being the meme coin conversation, but I think what leads us into that is also talking a little bit about Farcaster ecosystem, which is where we're seeing a lot of these meme coins gain a new type of traction, I would say. And so typically on connecting the dots, the first question we always ask somebody is, how did you end up on Warpcast and Farcaster? And what kept you coming back?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Blast from the past. So I wound up on Warpcast a really long time ago because my partner, Jesse, knew Dan Romero from a past life. And so we ended up being some of the first users on Warp. I think our team has like FIDs sub 30 generally. And so we were super, super early. And I think actually the liability of being so early to a new network is that when you join, you tend to underestimate it because you're like, there's no one here. Because literally there was no one there. We were like user number 30. And so that meant that we probably weren't as active as we should have been, especially when the network started picking up steam because we had been onboarded at such an early moment in time. And so I think a lot of us lapsed for a while and then came back to Warpcast and like rediscovered it last year when it had become a shelling point for crypto builders and a successor to crypto Twitter. So now speaking personally for myself, I spend way more time on Warpcast than I do on Twitter, X. It's become like my primary social network. And yeah, we are very interested in the Farcaster ecosystem. We hosted a Framed hackathon, hosted a developer meetup last weekend, are very interested in participating and investing in the space. But yeah, that's a bit of history.
And speaking of what I respect and admire about Variant is that you guys are first to, I don't know if it's the right word is first to market, but you are literally within hours of the Frame announcement. You guys had a Frame hackathon that weekend, which was amazing. And coming up, is it this weekend? You guys have another themed hackathon.
We do. Yeah, we're hosting a meme coin hackathon this weekend. It might be the first time ever those two words have ever been put together. So we're really excited for it. I think meme coins transcend just literally launching a coin. And so we're very interested in what people decide to build. So far, the applications that we've seen come through range from obviously like launching a new token, but also really interesting projects like building social and discovery experiences or building community infrastructure, given that so many of these meme coins are actually community currencies, to building like dexes and places for the liquidity to live. So there's a whole range of like experimentation and innovation going on that goes beyond just like launching a dog coin. And I think a lot of people tend to underestimate what's happening.
So maybe we could jump into meme coins from there. I think that's a good segue. I think Ted and I, in an episode, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before, but we got into meme coins. We each try to make bull and bear cases for them. I know you've written quite a lot about them. I think maybe what we could do is hear your take first. I'd like to hear your thesis on them, hear the best case, and maybe in your own words, what the bear case might be. And then we can maybe ask probing or clarifying question and, I don't know, debate, not in a like trying to win an argument way, but in a truth seeking way to try to find maybe some new ideas or some new insights that we haven't previously had. Does that sound like a good sort of approach?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think that
Red,
sounds
would you
I
add
like it.
anything?
Yes, I think that's a great approach. I love, Lee, what you do is you are really good at consolidating your thoughts into a screenshot essay the same way that I think Nick from On Confirmation does. And I love that. If I could just have a feed of your guys' screenshot essays, I'd be so happy. But I'm sure that you have thoughts that go beyond that very succinct screenshot. So I'd love to delve into that.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, they've been on our radar for some time because meme coins have been around for some time. And you could argue that meme coins go beyond just the current set of tokens that we regard as meme coins and potentially encompass other crypto tokens. I've heard argument as a meme coin. You could say a lot of traditional equities are traded like meme coins or get priced like meme coins. And so this, I would say, taking a step back from just meme coins, the trend of investing as a team sport, investing as a new form of financial entertainment is a broader, like secular trend that has interested us a lot. And meme coins are one particular incarnation of this trend of retail investors participating more broadly in investing and also treating investing as this team sport that they play over the internet. And that encompasses a whole range of assets, including meme coins.
So I guess like when you say team sport, are you saying that everyone, say, who's buying would be on the same team?
Yeah, it's when I say team sport, I mean that there's an inherently social, community-driven aspect to how you invest and pick and discover these assets. Going back to phenomenon like AMC or GameStop, I think those are like really the apotheosis of investing as a team sport, where you see internet communities rally behind a particular meme asset or stock and try to rally behind it or like piggyback off of a similar thesis as each other. And since then, I think a lot of that energy has sustained and grown and now is being directed towards a lot of these long tail tokens.
Let me push back on that a little bit, which is I think in the case, there's a great documentary on Netflix about the GameStop phenomenon. It's so good. That's captured my imagination for since it happened. I remember just being stunned by it, as I think the rest of the world was. What's interesting about it is the narrative was very clear. It had a very clear narrative, which was it's like us versus them. It's the little guy versus the big hedge fund. We're all going to band together and we're going to defeat them and we're going to win together.
Yep.
And it even had a kind of figurehead, this sort of mysterious internet leader. And I think like with those kinds of stories, I would agree with your thesis. But when I look at things like most meme coins that are like happening in crypto or something like Pumped Up Fun, it feels like it's more PvP. It feels like a game to me. It seems like it's a game, but it doesn't not seem like a game where everyone's on the same team. It feels more like every man for himself. And it feels very much like a game where you're saying, I'm going to buy in. I think Pumped Up Fun is like the epitome of this, which is you see the same graph over and over. It goes from
What
zero.
is Pumped Up Fun, by the way?
It's an experience.
Okay. Am I missing out
It's
or
a like-
am I okay?
Yeah. So you see the same graph. The graph goes from 0, it then moons, it goes back to 0. And to me, I remember seeing this and thinking, this does to meme coins what the internet really does to everything, which is it removes all the pretense, all the pretext, all the narrative, and it just gets you to like the core of the thing, which is a token price on a bonding curve that moons and crashes, and it happens super fast. And to me, like that's the vast majority of what all meme coins are doing. It's just a question of on what time scale, which I think this point of view that I've shared is very different from the one that you have and that you've been sharing. So like, I'm curious to hear what about what I'm saying is misinformed or missing the forest for the trees or whatever. Like, what am I missing? Because when I look at it and when I think about it, this is all I see.
I want to respond to that. So the first thing that I'll say is I think the universe of meme coins has now gotten so large and diverse and heterogeneous that it's difficult to bucket them all under one moniker of meme coin and treat
Yeah.
it as one monolithic category.
Okay.
A few weeks ago, I had this cast and also a tweet that said meme coins are fill in the blank, where I invited people to reply and actually complete a sentence. And
That's what I was
wanted
pulling
to,
up.
yeah, I
Because
wanted
the
to
answers are
understand.
so interesting.
They're so different and they range so vastly that I really think that the term meme coin has become stretched because it now encompasses a whole host of different things. And people were talking about them from being like community currencies that could rally and organize a community to lottery tickets to event-based meme coins that represented like prediction markets on certain events happening or certain ideas or movements becoming more popular. And I realized that there was like a degree of truth in what everyone was saying. It's just that they were referring to a different segment or subset of the meme coin market. And this inspired me to publish a taxonomy of meme coins, which was a screenshot essay maybe 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, where I outlined the broad buckets of meme coins that I saw existing in the world. And that taxonomy included everything from like the meme first meme coins, which started with an internet meme that was already popular, like Doge or Shiba, to the community first meme coins like Degen or Enjoy, to product driven meme coins like When or Unisocks or even Zorbs could be considered like product led meme coins, to the long tail, like token first meme coins, which are just like starting with a token and putting it out there in the world and seeing what happens to it. And I think depending on which segment of the market you're looking at, what you said, Johnny, is true.
I see.
Where like the long tail of assets that don't have a built-in community, maybe don't have an enduring meme around it, that are just launched into the ether, they do have this like very short-lived life cycle usually because there's nothing really durable there to sustain it. Whereas some of the other tokens that we've seen launch that are associated with a product like When and the DEX aggregator Jupiter on Solana, or things that are attached to this very long-standing internet meme that is already very popular like Doge, those have been the ones that seem to have more durable value associated with it and maybe like a source of fuel that propels it potentially across market cycles.
And what do you think? What is that? What?
That's my question too.
Yeah.
I'm
What
kind of
is
like,
that fuel? And we can say it's the meme, like it's the meme of Doge. But what do we mean when we say that? Is it specific people that are like bull posting and like posting memes and like pumping it, like propping it up? Is that it, or is there something? Is there some like weird, like ephemeral quality that it just like lives on or something? I don't know. Like cats
Right.
on the internet. Like it's
like
a thing that's been around.
I think this is the question at the moment. And if you knew the answer to this question, then you would obviously be putting it into practice by investing.
yeah.
If you could predict what is actually valuable, what has enduring value. I think no one knows the answer for sure because it is such an emerging, like meme coin investing and meme coin trading is such an emerging form of investing versus like traditional value investing, where you know how to price an asset that has like cash flows and you know how to build like a model to back into what the stock price should be based on PE multiples or whatever. But with meme coins and these attention assets, like how you value them is still very much like dark magic, where you take into consideration lots of different factors. What is the initial community that this launched into? How much attention does this meme command and how is it trending? Does it cross a certain threshold where it no longer becomes a meme coin, but instead becomes a currency, a utility token? Is there a certain number of integrations where it passes some threshold and just like actually becomes a utility token instead of being traded off of like the amount of attention the meme has? So all of that is to say, I don't know for sure what the answer is, but it's like some combination of all of the above. And if you take something like Doge, for instance, which now has, I think, a $22 billion market cap as of today, it fluctuates wildly. So by the time this gets published, it can be very different. I would argue that Doge has now existed for so long across different like bull and bear cycles that it has lendiness, where anyone who is interested in crypto, who just wants exposure to crypto, might say, actually, this is just like part of the basket of tokens that I buy to get exposure to this asset class. And I think like a lot of meme coins probably aspire to that level, but there is some like path dependent random walk that they embark on where they could either falter from that path or be on that trajectory.
The way that I think about it too is obviously you work in venture. And so I feel like in venture, the question is often like, what's the moat? And so for a lot of meme coins, that's the ultimate question too, is what is the moat? And so if you look at something like Solana and let's say like Joe Biden, I'm like, okay, you know that at least for the year of 2024, this meme coin will probably fluctuate in popularity or interest over the course of the year as the election comes up. And who knows what will happen after the election. But I can see it as like a strong meme for that reason. Something
Become
like,
the canonical asset for that particular event, which is the election.
yep. And then if you look at something with Degen, one could have argued that Degen also has no moat. You've seen a lot of other coins, or let's say like meme coins, come into Farcaster, pretty much replicating or mirroring a lot of their go-to-market. But Degen has now introduced utility in multiple ways going into that product, right? Where now products are using it as a form of currency among its users. And so I wonder if can you just walk us through leaning into that product pathway and what you find interesting there?
Yeah, if you think of a particular meme coin, you can probably unbundle the sources of value for that meme coin into different drivers. Like every meme coin is like a stack of different value drivers, where part of that stack is like the attention value based on how prevalent the meme is. And then like based on the particular meme coin, there's probably other sources of value that it derives from as well. And so in the case of Degen, there's some meme value associated with just like the Degen meme. Degen is now a moniker that a lot of people in crypto resonate with, and potentially some of the value comes from just being associated with a prevalent kind of term. And then for Degen, there's also the utility value, which you highlighted, of people are tipping in Degen. Other applications are integrating Degen as a form of payments in their applications, like Pearl and Dracula and Rocket. A lot of emerging crypto applications are now accepting Degen as just another currency that you can pay in their applications. And then there's potentially other forms of value. Maybe there's scarcity value, like Bitcoin there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and maybe the monetary policy drives part of the value of Bitcoin. And so you can go through any meme coin and analyze it in terms of what are the different buckets of value drivers and decompose it respectively. And so what we're seeing now, and what I've written a lot about in my screenshot essays, is I think just piggybacking off of a meme and having the attention value associated with a meme, that playbook has been maybe exhausted, or it's definitely more known. And a lot of meme coins exist that are now attached to popular internet memes. So now teams are getting more creative with exploring what are the other value pillars that they could build into the meme coin that go beyond just capturing some sort of transient attention. And that includes like utility. So a lot of meme coin teams are trying to do partnerships with applications to integrate them, or they're trying to do creative things like putting the whiff hat on the sphere, like just ways to sustain their value and prevalence. I think ultimately it does boil down to attention. Like all of these things are done to increase demand and attention for the underlying token, but there's a lot of ways that can be done.
Fundamentally, though, do you think Degen is a meme coin?
I think it's a type of meme coin, to go back to the taxonomy of meme coins that I outlined. I think it's different. It meaningfully differs from meme first meme coins like Doge and Shib. But if you ask Yasek, I think he would call it a meme coin because it's not building an application. It doesn't have like direct sort of rights to anything in terms of governance or economics. And it is a meme coin in a sense, but it like belongs in a different classification of meme coin than a lot of the historical meme coins that we've seen. And that classification I would put as like a community first meme coin, where this is a meme coin that launched into a very specific community, and it's acting as like an organizational tool for a distributed community that has shared values. And the token also plays a role in like enforcing various behaviors in that community.
See,
So
I think I would say that it started as a meme coin and then it became a utility token because you can do things with it. You can tip with it. Dracula, Bracket, and Pearl use it as their kind of in-app currency. And so as soon as those things started to happen, it transcended the kind of cesspool of meme coins.
I think probably we're just arguing over terminology and
mm,
like when do things cease to be a meme coin and when do they start to be a utility coin. And I think a lot of meme coins are probably somewhere along that spectrum of trying to become a utility token because they realize that the underlying meme is like a very tenuous thing to rely on long term.
it reminds me of your spectrum where you have the spectrum of social networking apps or social media apps that says like how much of this is actually relationship based to how was like you actually have no
Yeah,
real
fame
network
versus love.
effects. Exactly. So I feel the same type of spectrum applies to what we're talking about. I think you can map it on the spectrum as something gains legitimacy and maybe starts to develop a mode. It moves along the spectrum where it goes more towards love and less towards fame. So that's just one thought I had. But on the product point, I feel like oftentimes when meme coins start to flourish, and I think we saw this on Warpcast, is that it usually ends up hurting the UX of a product or of a platform more than it helps it to start. We saw that with Warpcast with like when DGen first came out, it was I quit. I boycotted Warpcast for 4 days because I didn't like it. And so as we think about, okay, there's this amazing benefit of meme coins helping Bracket, Dracula, all these others bootstrap and be able to get users and provide real utility. Whereas the actual launch platform, Warpcast, I would say it's completely hurt. It's like the full downside
Yeah.
of it. How do we even, as like users of both of the things, like how do we grapple with some of that? Especially when we want the overall ecosystem to succeed.
Yeah, for sure. I was having this debate recently with someone who was at our Farcaster developer brunch last weekend, where we were debating has the existence of degen helped or hurt the quality of content on Farcaster? If you just thought about the net impact that it's had, is it positive or negative? And I don't know, everyone probably has a different view of it and it would probably answer differently. I think it's probably led to it's definitely had both impacts depending on the pocket of content that you see and where you're looking. And yeah, like it has had beneficial impact because that means like creators of great content can actually get paid for that and recognized for it. But it also means that there's a lot of spam and there's also people begging for tips and doing like tip trading and farming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that dynamic, the latter dynamic that all of the spamminess, it probably gets introduced whenever you have extrinsic incentives. It like skews behavior and it catalyzes people who want to do the least amount of work in order to get the most amount of incentives. I think most products have to be designed to recognize that it's just a facet of human nature that people are going to want to gain incentives and maximize their ROI and be really rigorous in designing mechanisms to mitigate that. In this case, I think it was really difficult because DGen launched permissionlessly without probably Warpcast's awareness. And so it just like proliferated in a way that they couldn't have seen all of the downstream consequences. Whereas if it were built by the core team, I think they would have designed probably a more holistic experience that would have mitigated a lot of those downsides. To give you an example, like social networks, they recognize that their version of incentives, likes, retweets, comments, people do get dopamine from those.
They
and
do.
They will try to
They
will
do.
try to do the they will try to take the least amount of work to get that dopamine hit. And so you get platforms that have a ton of really low quality content on them. If you looked at the entire corpus of content that gets created on TikTok in a day, probably the average content quality is terrible. It's just that that average video is not shown to most users. Instead, the algorithm sorts these videos and is able to put all of the poor quality content into a trash bin that gets filtered and sorted out so that most users are protected from it.
Mhm.
In the case of a token with an underlying application that is a third-party application, you don't have that kind of end-to-end experience that was built to make sure that all of the negative behavior that gets catalyzed has this release valve, at least initially upfront when the token launches.
I want to go back to something you said about the difference between a meme coin and utility token and how maybe it's a semantic difference that we have. One of the things that I have a hard time getting past is just like the economics of meme coins, which is that the only source of income, of cash, is from buyers. So unlike, say, a stock or something like, say, a Uniswap token, there's no cash flow except for people who are from basically from trading. And so the new cash acts as exit liquidity for the old cash. And so in that sense, it's PvP. And so you can say that the game can continue to play insofar as the meme remains durable and in people's attention, like inside the kind of cone of their attention span. But as soon as, and that's why it's so important for the people who have the biggest bags to prop it up, because you want to keep the game playing for as long as possible. But as soon as it exits that cone, then it's like everything just goes to zero. But like fundamentally, those are the economics of meme coins, and you can't escape that. The only thing that can escape that would be a charismatic leader who has a vision. So somebody like Yasik who's saying, no, we're going to imbue this with, it's more than just a meme coin. It's going to have integrations. It's going to have its own L3, it's et cetera, et cetera. There's other tokens like that benefit from having a vision, having a leader, having someone who's executing on a path. But in the absence of that, the economics tell a very clear story, which is that it's just like fundamentally PvP. And so anything you want to say about distributed capital formation, community building, all of that are like fancy labels on what is essentially just a money game. Would you?
What do you want to ask?
I'm pushing back. Yeah.
What's the
What's
question?
He's just expressing his feelings.
I'm saying, like, do you disagree? What about the statements I've made are incorrect?
Essentially what you're saying is that it's a zero-sum game that these participants are playing, where if one person makes money, then over a long time horizon, and maybe it's actually quite a long time horizon in the case of things like Doge or whatever, there's this zero-sum element where someone had to lose in order for someone else to gain because there was no underlying
It's gambling.
fundamental. Value.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're referring to the class of just like pure meme coins, where it's literally just a token launched into the world, I do think that is true for the majority of meme coins. I think where that stops being the case is when these meme coins have roadmaps that do actually lead to revenue generation and like value creation that isn't zero sum. So you gave the example of DGen launching its own L3, like potentially having sequencer revenue from that. I think that's the point at which like it stops being zero sum.
Got
Yeah,
it.
and then you also see like other meme coins that are launching chains. I think it's SHIB. Yeah, SHIB is launching its own L2 and using some of the like transaction fees to buy and burn SHIB. So
Yeah.
they are like, there are meme coins that are trying to have more sustainable economics beyond just this kind of zero sum element. But I think like also my question when people point out the zero sum element of meme coin trading is I wonder if it's inherently a bad thing. Okay, stay with me for a
Interesting.
second.
Okay, I'm excited to
Like,
hear this.
yeah, a lot of products in society have this zero sum dynamic. Like a lot of stock trading is actually, I'm just going to buy it to sell it to the next highest
Yeah.
buyer. Most stocks don't give dividends. Like a lot of them trade far in excess of what like normal PE ratios and fundamental analysis would suggest. And so this kind of dynamic pervades a lot of the economy. I think the thing about a lot of meme coin trading that does have this zero sum element is that users and traders, they know what they're participating in versus other areas of the economy. They might not actually think that they're participating in a zero sum game. For
Super
meme,
important point. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yes. Yeah, for meme coin trading, I spent like several weeks over the news delving deep into Reddit and in the internet and forums about meme coin trading to try and understand like why are people doing this? What do they think they're actually doing? And I wanted to understand the psychology of people buying a lot of these tokens. And what I saw was that these people know exactly what the game they're playing is. They're playing this essentially lottery ticket game. A lot of people acknowledge they're just buying lottery tickets and they know that there's a chance that it goes to zero. And meme coins, I think most meme coins do not promise anything more than that. And they're super apparent that this is literally just a lottery ticket that you're buying into. And I actually think that is probably better than a lot of other projects in the crypto ecosystem that will take your money and promise that they're doing all of these things and building out this long-term roadmap, but that is all vaporware and there's no intention to
I feel
do
like,
that.
Johnny, you
Yeah.
made that case when I was trying to say, oh, no utility. And he was like, what do you think about the ICOs that promised abundance and everything and then ended up just rugging everyone?
Well,
Which is better,
that's what
which is worse?
Yeah, that's my, unlike most projects, which are they LARP as legit projects, but are actually just shitcoins. Degen was like the opposite. It was like LARPing is a shitcoin, but actually was a super legit project. And so I think meme coins just remove a lot of that pretense. It's just, that's what I think is so fascinating about pump.fun is it's just all
There's no
about
pretense.
What
Yeah.
There's
is
zero.
pumped? Is pumped
Totally.
You
fun
gotta
where you
see it.
just do you just is it just meme coin?
Just kind of look at it.
It's like
Yeah.
it's a Solana meme
Oh.
coin launchpad and like discovery, like you can see all of the tokens being created.
It's for me, it's like
and
it's the purest form of meme coins, like in crypto. Like it's just so it's crazy and funny, but it's actually elegant.
I think the argument that I made too is that for crypto native people, I think we all know it is buying into lottery, right? Like it's a lottery ticket. We expect it to go to zero. We could lose all of our money on it. What concerns me sometimes is that, okay, when these start to gain traction, say going back to Bowden, very easy. I think Bowden was in the news. Somebody, CNBC covered it as, oh, look at this. When that happens, mainstream then enters when it's almost peaking. And so you have, I don't know, I guess it's like crypto native versus mainstream retail investors who then buy into it. And at that point, it almost loses its magic, right? Like everybody who bought in got it to where it was. It's almost like, oh, this is the game. And then they exit. So that's just like one example that I've seen that play over. And that's where my concern is on the money side. I feel like there are perhaps early degen community members who do want it to become a way in which you onboard mainstream everyday people. And I think at that point, we'll see, okay, when retail do come in, does it maintain or do people start selling and dumping? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good, like I would push on that question. Like, do 100% of the players really know that it is a zero sum game? I think it's a fair question to say, is zero sum bad? There's a lot of zero sum games that are played throughout the economy. Like that doesn't, like meme coins aren't bad just because that might be true. One of the examples that like Yasik is, which is great. You go to Vegas, you buy a few $100s of chips, you go and you play a bunch of various games for a few hours, you lose 100% of your money, and you go back to your hotel room or wherever, you go back home and you're like happy with that outcome because it was entertaining and it was fun. I think that's a totally legit use case. Everybody knows that the odds are in the house's favor, and yet we still play. Why? Because it's entertaining. So I agree.
Yeah.
I think meme coins have the holy trinity of really sticky, like addictive apps, which is that they are they have like really quick repeatability. You can play them rapidly. They have economic opportunities. You can make money, and there's a variable reward. So you don't know what's going to happen. So they're like, they like suck people in this like really powerful way. I guess where it starts to feel like it crosses the line is when some non-zero number of the players, perhaps majority of them even, are told that the odds are not in the house's favor and that they do have a fair chance of winning. In other words, that it isn't just a lottery, but that there is a real community being built, where there is a
Yeah.
real roadmap, where there is some. And so they go, oh, really? Okay, cool. We're building community. Great. They buy in, they ride the wave, they get dumped on, and then they go, crypto's a scam. I think the more and more that happens, the more as an industry, it's harder to make progress. That's where personally my bias is. I'm like,
I
as
agree.
I've been arguing on this, I'm taking the kind of anti-stance, though in previous episodes, I've taken the opposite. But since you're here, I'm like, okay, I'll play the.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm seeing another side of you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that perspective?
No, I totally agree with you. In a world where people are going to want to participate in meme coins, my fundamental philosophy is people should be able to spend their money how they want. They shouldn't be protected from spending their money in ways that we deem to exercise poor judgment, or we need to protect people from themselves. I just fundamentally don't believe that. I think people should be able to do what they want with their own capital, providing that it doesn't harm
Capitalism,
other people.
baby. Just kidding.
Hell yeah.
However, I think we get into dangerous territory when products profess to be something that they're not. When they're
Yes.
buying into something with an information asymmetry versus the producer of that product. And so when it comes to meme coins, I think we get into dangerous territory when these projects, they market themselves as something really ambitious, something that will have value accrual or whatever, and more enduring value than what is actually going to be the case or what the actual intention behind that roadmap is. And so I think the best thing that we can do as an ecosystem is make sure that people are making decisions as consumers with full information. And that means knowing the game they're playing and knowing the rules of the game just as much as the creators of the games do. I think that is what we should strive for, is making sure that the game is fair and that the rules are apparent and known to the people who are participating versus trying to limit what people are able to participate in fundamentally. So that's generally how I feel about the whole thing. I think there's a lot of parallels to like NFTs and how NFTs played out in the last cycle, where like we got into really dangerous territory when a lot of these PFP projects professed to have really ambitious roadmaps and to be building games and movies and whatnot. But like a lot of their creators never really had an intention to do that.
Yeah.
And that was just a ploy to get people to mint these things at really high prices. And so people didn't go into it knowing the rules of the game, knowing what was actually happening versus the project's creators. And I really hope that we can minimize that this time. And maybe that means meme coin launch pads that have actually enforced a fair launch where there is no ton of reserve being kept for the creator or something like that. What else?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. If there was like a kind of meme coin launch pad and it defined, okay, here's the allocations, here's the smart contract, et cetera, et cetera. Here are the rules of the game. And it really enforced that information symmetry. I'm with you. It's, hey, let the good times roll. Let's have fun. It's entertaining. There's all kinds of new stuff that could emerge from that. If anything, I feel like that's what's needed to see what's out on this frontier.
Yeah.
It's like the rugs that are this like one step forward, two steps back kind of thing.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, totally. That's
Yeah.
why I actually feel a little bit nervous with all of the scene coin.
Me too. I feel like scene coin is labeling something before it deserves to be labeled in a way. I don't know how you feel about that. I have a lot of thoughts on Enjoy. It's completely launched, and in theory, the contract is owned by Seed Club, a venture fund. It's designed and deployed by Seed Club, the same way that Yasik did it elsewhere. there's pros and cons to it having a founder, having a leader that you can look to. But I don't know if that will be the same type of leadership that Yasik implements over DGen. My second thing with it is it's almost immediately been called or referenced as like a scene coin. I have a hard time understanding the labeling of it when we haven't actually seen it play out in place. And so that's something else too, is just, it feels like you're putting, I'm really bad at colloquial phrases, but it's like the cart before the horse. And then I was also like, it's only on the Zora network. So like, what is the goal here? And if the goal is just like more content on Zora, more comments on Zora, more creator rewards, I just always am constantly asking the question of like, why and so what? And with a lot of these coins, you don't need to ask that. But when you're going to label something as a scene coin, I feel like, then it actually deserves to be questioned. But I'm curious what your concerns are with this new proliferation of the term scene coin.
I think a lot of those concerns are warranted. I don't know enough about Enjoy to talk about specifics, but the part that I was gonna flag is I think trouble arises when there's information asymmetry between participants and creators, or participants and producers. And I think once you start getting into scene coin territory, you start getting like these token creators saying that there's going to be all these plans to add utility and integrations, and like how there's a real community behind it, and how there's like a long-term roadmap to make this community currency, and just like all sorts of things that you don't see with traditional meme coins. And so I think then it just has the potential to become more opaque to the end buyers than the traditional meme coins that are literally like you're buying a lottery ticket. That's what I meant by those start to make me a little bit nervous, because I think that opens up the potential for the information asymmetry to arise. That's what I mean. I think so far Enjoy, I don't know enough about like community uptake to say whether or not it's actually succeeding at being like a community currency for its particular target audience. I think I've seen a lot of excitement around Enjoy from a lot of really influential people in crypto. I think that it has the right intentions, but I could see the term scene coin being co-opted in the same way that like 10K PFPs were co-opted by bad actors.
I know we don't have a ton more time, so I want to ask, are there any projects in either meme coins themselves or projects in support of meme coins that are happening now or that you would like to see happen?
Yeah, I think the request for startups that is embedded in the meme coin hackathon invite for this weekend, it gives a good overview of what we're looking for. We're really interested in applications that are building around meme coins, applications that give meme coins utility. We're interested in the social layer of meme coins, like where do these communities live for discussion and discovery. And then I think experiments like Enjoy and Zora are fundamentally really interesting, because if it works, then it's really positive sum for both of those projects, both teams. And I would love to see that kind of model being applied to other exciting crypto projects as well. I think there's a lot of great applications out there that if they got a boost of distribution, could get their flywheel going. And so if anyone is like thinking about that playbook applied to other projects in crypto, that's very interesting to us too.
It's a really exciting time right now, I think, to be at this intersection. This is the first week of Deploy on DGen as well, which is another, hey, let's experiment with what can be done with a meme coin. Then you have your hackathon coming up. So I'm really excited to see what the outcomes are from that. And then the next week, we pretty much have the Farcon hackathon, Farhack. My number one priority right now is I want there to be a DGen client. That's just, we're all the DGen.
Like a DGen, the token client?
Like built on top of Farcaster, where then instead of everyone coming into Warpcast, you can pretty much do all the same exact things, but you do it in a different client. And it's mostly the DGen community. Only because I think that solves the Warpcast UX harm while still allowing that content to live on the ecosystem, be readable, be everything from there. I don't know. I just think meme coin clients are interesting. So that's,
That is interesting. Yeah. I think we had this idea in our request for startups for the Farcaster ecosystem piece that we published a couple weeks ago. We have like different sections in there. Yeah. Builders who go to this Farcon hackathon should definitely read it, because we have ideas for like clients and frames and like new like infrastructure, like decentralized content moderation And one of the ideas for clients was like a token-centric client that could be built around popular community tokens.
Love
And
that.
you could surface like the core utility of that token inside this client and build for that token as like a first class citizen.
Mhm.
So yeah, like a degen centric client could make a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Like an enjoy client maybe makes sense, or things along those lines.
One
And
idea that One
oh, go
idea I've
ahead.
been sharing that I hope someone builds is where you download the app and then you just select whatever channel you want, and then the app becomes that channel's app. So in the same way, when you download the MLB app, and the first thing it asks you is select your team, and then you
Mhm.
select the team like whatever, the Mets, and then that just becomes the Mets app then. So like
Yes.
it's the Mets schedule, it's the Mets store, you can buy tickets, it's news, it's everything related to the Mets. And so I'm like, oh, I wish someone would do this with a channel where it's like the whole app is just for that one channel. But you could
You
also
can do this
imagine,
in Nook. Are you on
yeah,
Nook?
yes, I've played with this in Nook, but it's interesting to think about that, but for a meme coin, where it's like you can
Mm.
launch a meme coin, and maybe that entails launching the ERC20, adding liquidity, facilitating trading, setting up the channel, and then having all the kind of community building and stuff, but it's all oriented around the coin. So you can that would be like whatever the degen app, or the enjoy app or whatever. It's just like the first screen on the app is pick the coin or create a new one.
It becomes,
Right.
what's your Solana meme coin? It's literally that. Yeah,
Pump.one. Yeah.
pump.fun.
Built on
Yeah, built
Farcaster.
on Farcaster. I do. I know people have already asked me. They're like, "Hey, can we build at Farcon Hackathon? Can we build from Varian's list?" So I'm really excited.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
I was like, "Yes,
Yes,
that's the point."
please.
They
Tell
literally,
us if you
yeah.
are. Yeah. It's a request for startups so that hopefully people build these ideas. No, I think that's a great idea because playing out what we're currently seeing out to a longer time horizon to the extreme, what do we think will happen? Probably there's going to be way more tokens that get launched that are Farcaster native that try to act as this unification point for a community, particular community on Farcaster. And each of those tokens is going to try and implement their own norms, their own utilities. They're trying to get embedded in the flow of content, like tipping with degen, but they're all going to invent kind of their own mechanism to do that. And at some point, I think it's going to be really difficult for Warpcast to support all of those tokens and for all of that to
Mhm.
appear in like a seamless way to end users, given the proliferation of different community tokens. And so having token-centric clients that are maybe even more verticalized for that particular community currency and what it does and the utility that it plays in the app, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think degen is such a great example of a channel that just it took on a life of its own. Like it has its own memes, it has its own like button, it has its own currency, it has its own like culture carriers, it's got its own history, like its own lore. I think that in order for Farcaster to succeed, every channel needs that, and there needs to be millions and millions of channels. Like they need to become their own like economies, and every economy needs a medium of exchange. So
I
that's like a perfect use
yeah.
case for the coin, for the token.
I did have this really weird dream. This is how you know I spend too much time on Farcaster. And I also have been watching Three Body Problem. So like weird stuff, you know? Every time I like jumped into this new multiverse or whatever, they were using degen or another token as their currency. And I was like, oh, this is channels. Like the degen channel here, you have to use degen. And then, oh, you go to the enjoy channel, you have to use enjoy. But it's the same as, oh, you go to America, you use US dollars. Oh, you go to
Yeah.
China, you use the yen. Like
Yeah.
it, when I started thinking about it that way, it made a lot of sense. But it was I woke up and was like, I can't go on Warpcast like all day. I need to get off. Yeah.
Yeah. Along these lines, I was researching the history of community currencies recently because I was very interested in viewing a lot of these emerging Farcaster tokens as community currencies. And there's actually a long history in the real world of different cities or geos implementing their own local community currency as a way to try and encourage people to shop local and keep a lot of the economic activity sort of within that particular geography. A past example is like the Bristol pound, where Bristol, England had its own community currency and people could use that at local merchants. And at one point it had a ton of support from local merchants. And then I think Ithaca, New York had its own community currency for a while as well. And
Yeah.
I think like the history of these community currencies is quite mixed actually, where a lot of them don't exist anymore. Like the Bristol pound was deprecated, Ithaca hours also no longer exists because it just became a lot for merchants to manage. Like they
But
had
the
to manage
swaps
two
on
separate
chain
currency
make it so
systems.
easy.
And yeah, like then you also have to get. That's true. Maybe that makes it easier for people to manage.
Yeah, if
But
you can
yeah,
obfuscate all the overhead, and it's just that's what's so exciting about cross-chain and cross-currency payments is that something can be priced in X, but you only have Y. No problem. You just pay,
Like
and
relay.
then the
Is it
tech kind
relay?
of obfuscates all the complexity needed to
Yeah.
facilitate the transaction.
right.
Yeah, there's a bunch of systems that do this. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting that in the world, we don't have a bajillion
Mhm.
local community currencies. We have state level community currencies, meaning state as in country. And it's interesting to think, is that pattern going to replicate in the digital world where there's going to be consolidation into a few
It's
major
really
community currencies instead of them
I have a
existing
question
at the micro
related to
level?
this too,
If
is
you had
because like
to guess,
even
what do you think it would?
how do I describe this? I am bearish on
Uh,
loyalty platforms where it's like a siloed platform, but I'm very bullish on loyalty programs for this exact purpose. Is that if it's like a loyalty platform and exists within its own like ecosystem, then it is a state-owned currency in some way. Whereas if it is a loyalty program, it is a community-owned currency because they can take that loyalty program, the token, whatever it is, and be able to move it from one platform to the other platform. But there are some loyalty platforms today that only it's a siloed loyalty platform, and the tokens only exist within their own ecosystem. So that's like how I think about that. To me, is the equivalent of a state-owned currency or like a centralized currency.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And going back to Johnny's question, one conclusion that you could draw from like the precedent set by loyalty programs is that most consumers don't care about most of the loyalty programs that they're enrolled in. They probably care about one or two of them. And then the rest of them, they don't engage with. But the ones that customers actually do engage with are like their credit card point system and maybe their airline point system. And then everything else you like just can't mentally, cognitively handle at the same time.
Track. Yeah.
And so maybe that's an argument for there not being a bajillion community currencies, but rather there being consolidation is on the user side, the mental overhead of thinking about all of the communities that I'm in, all of the tokens that I then have to pay in becomes too much. And instead you just rather have a handful.
I think that I think the natural state of the world is variance and complexity. And I think that the trend towards consolidation, certainly with state currencies, I think legal tender laws are the reason why we all use the same US dollar, is because literally we're forced to by law. No such legal tender requirements exist on chain. I think that's why, again, you see this return to variance, to this massive frontier of all these different tokens. I think in the real world, the reason why, even in the absence of, say, legal tender laws, consolidation is because the user experience, like exchange rates and transfers and carrying all these things and pricing these different things, it's difficult. But I think that in crypto, we can obfuscate a lot of that. And so the kind of the user experience burden and like the cost of holding all these, I think goes basically to zero. And so I think the benefits start to outweigh the costs to hold all these different currencies. I don't know. I asked you what you think the future would be. That's what I think the future is like more exploration, more variance, and you get to have your cake and eat it too.
That's interesting. I think one dynamic that I haven't heard called out by a lot of people, or really anyone actually, is the fact that a lot of these meme coins, scene coins, whatever you want to call them, they are trying to have their cake and eat it too, in terms of they're
Mhm.
trying to both be a utility token, but they're also trying to capture a lot of the
Yep.
price movement and trading energy of a meme coin.
Yep.
And I think those two things are actually fundamentally contradictory.
Yep.
Where if you have an asset that is rapidly appreciating in price,
Yes.
you don't want to spend it. You don't
Yep.
want to use it as a mechanism of payments, because why would you? No one wants to spend their Bitcoin, because if they actually believe in, future potential, they don't want to spend it for
Yep.
a good that is just fixed. And the issue that I'm seeing is, yeah, if you want to be a meme coin and have that volatility and virality and growth potential, then that just inherently detracts from the potential as a payments mechanism.
So it's interesting you say this, because one complaint about the DGen L3 was that to actually take it off of L3 and back to base, it's a 7-day withdrawal period. And so the way that I see the L3 and the way that I've approached the L3 is like, here's my play money, and this is my DGen play money that I'm okay to fuck around with on DGen L3, and everything else I'll hold somewhere safe in base if I think it's going to appreciate in nature. And that was my take. It's actually somewhat of a moat, because you can only sell it after 7 days. So you can't actually be day trading it the same way that you and
Yeah,
I
but
think.
what you consider to be your play money, though, will really change based on the volatility, the price volatility.
Yeah, of course. Again, the same way that when you buy into a meme coin, that's part of it. That's also what you anticipate. Like, that's my play money. Like when I did DGen Poker, I first started it and was like, oh, it will be like a 5,000 DGen buy-in. Then it grew 5x. And so then we were like, okay, never mind. It's just going to be like 1,000 DGen in. And everyone was okay with that, because they were like, no,
Right.
it was going to be like $100 US equivalent. And that's kind of how they wanted to think about it. I don't know if that's the right approach. That's just the approach that we took. So it just ends up, I think, introducing something new to trading behavior. That is usually what dictates or drives a lot of price action. It's like 10 million in volume happening over a weekend is like a significant amount of DGen being traded or used on the L3, that I actually think this helps build the moat, in addition to some of like the financialization of what you can do with using
The analogy is like the L3 is to the meme coin what the hotel is to the casino, which is it's a way to keep you there.
Yeah.
So if you ever do well in Vegas, right? Pit
That's a
boss
good
comes
analogy.
down.
You're right.
It's happened to me. They'll come comp you a night or 2 nights. They'll give you tickets to a show. Why? Because they want you to stay.
Yeah.
Hey, you're going to keep playing, and the odds are that if you keep playing, the money's going to go back from your pocket to theirs.
Yeah. I am running like
That's really
12
funny.
minutes late forever. I feel like we could just like geek out on this for, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, thank you, Lee, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. Again, like I know I tried to take the anti approach, but I think the truth is we're both super fascinated by this and think there's definitely something here. It's just a question of what is it, where is it, what's going to be the final form. So really appreciate you taking your time out of the day to chat with us and share your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
appreciate all of the debate and discussion. I think it's just really fascinating for so many different reasons, and I love debating and
And you're
discussing
good at it.
things like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see the arguments for, I can see the arguments against. And yeah, I think meme coins are like the ultimate Rorschach test for like your underlying political philosophy, your views on internet culture, all sorts of different things, capitalism, whatever. And so
Yeah.
I just find them endlessly fascinating. So thanks for having me.